Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Premiership Quarter. Today, I'm going to be doing my round 6 tips for the AFL season. I'm going to be going through each game, talking about who I think will win, giving a bit of my thoughts on how they played last week, and where I think the game will be won this week. And with that being said, let's get into the video. To start with, we have on the Thursday night St Kilda versus the Western Bulldogs. St Kilda are coming off a hard-fought one-point loss against GWS in a game where they really weren't in control for any of it, aside from the last 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. They were outplayed quite heavily in the first 3.5 quarters, and even with GWS getting injuries to both Sam Taylor and Stephen Coniglio, they couldn't do much to properly challenge GWS, and they were only able to get the ball freely moving in the back half until halfway through the fourth quarter, and that was a lot based on Brad Hill and also Hugo Garcia providing a lot of pressure on the ball and forcing a lot of turnovers in the middle. It's really impressive from such a youngster to do that in a big game. But they're playing the Bulldogs, who lost to the Bombers on the weekend. It was a pretty disappointing loss, and there's been a lot of backlash on Beveridge and some of the players as well. It was poor game from them. They made a couple of changes, brought in O'Donnell apparently as part of preparation for the Saints game, not even necessarily for the Bombers game, which is an interesting call. But outside of that, they just couldn't get firing. Lib is going to be missing the game as well, and that sort of leans me towards St Kilda. But as a St Kilda fan, there's something in the back of my mind that's just thinking, okay, the Bulldogs are coming off one okay loss against Geelong, but a really poor loss. All the pressure's building up, and there's got to be a response. So for me, I think the Bulldogs will respond, and they will win by 10 points and get a good win on the board for Luke Beveridge and his side. Then on the Friday night, we have Adelaide versus Essendon. Adelaide coming off an excellent win against Carlton on the Saturday afternoon. They were down by 3 goals with about 10, 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and they're able to get a goal after goal after goal after goal in the fourth quarter, 4 in a row to finish, and they ended up winning by 4 points, kicking extremely accurately, 16 goals for, which really kept them in the game. There was a very high-scoring, accurate game to start, but then Carlton dipped away. They were very inaccurate in the end. They kicked, 14 goals, 14. So when you're 50%, it's not the best, and that sort of was what won Adelaide the game. Their midfield mix was changed. Saligo was excellent. Rankin was excellent. And that's sort of what changed the game for them. And then Essendon, on the other hand, got, as I mentioned before, a good win over the Bulldogs. Their midfield was much better. Sam Durran came in and played an excellent role on Marcus Montempelli, and that set up the game for them. They were able to quieten the Bulldogs midfield that had been really rolling to start the season. And with all the injuries, no Perkins, no Ridley, no Wright, they were able to get a really, really solid win, and they're going to be looking to back that up against Adelaide. I think it's going to be another midfield battle, and I think Adelaide will probably take a bit more hope into this game, I'd call it. I think they were a bit of a better performance than what Essendon were, even though Essendon were really, really good in the second half. They really blew Bulldogs away, kicking 10 of 11 goals at one stage. And I just think that the Crows forward line could potentially get over the top of Essendon, and with the momentum with their midfield can be carrying now, they could really get on top, and I think it'll be another relatively close game with the Crows winning by 14 points. We then have Port Adelaide versus Collingwood at the MCG. Collingwood are coming off the bye. They had, before that, a relatively solid win against Hawthorn, where they were up heavily at halftime and then slowly faded away, and they almost lost the game. Hawthorn had a chance to win it. Connor McDonald missed a shot running in from about 30, 35 out, and they were able to just scrape over the line. And then Port Adelaide are coming off a really good win over Fremantle in a dour affair, I think you could call it. They were down by 9 points late, and they were just able to get something they hadn't gotten all game, as I mentioned in my fine margins video, where they were able to get a contested mark inside 50. Charlie Dixon had it, and he kicked the goal. They were able to get the ball forward again, and um, Jason Horn-Francis were able to take the mark in a decent one-on-one, and he was able to snap the goal. It was a good performance from them, and I think it's going to be a really, really good game. Port Adelaide are coming off 3 straight weeks at the Adelaide Oval, so there's going to be a bit of unfamiliarity playing on a different ground now. Collingwood are coming off the bye. They obviously just had the Nathan Murphy retirement. I'm recording this on the Tuesday night, and it's going to be a bit of an emotional game, I think you could say. It's going to be a really, really tough battle between two midfields that should be firing, two forward lines that have struggled at times, but also two back lines that have been underperforming and have tried to gel to start the year. So, who do I think is going to win? I think it's a really tough call, but I think I have to go with Collingwood in this one. But I think it's going to be a really close game, unlike it was last year. And I think I'm going to go Collingwood in a close win by 7 points. We then have what could also be a really good game, which is Carlton versus GWS. It's going to be at Marvel Stadium. Carlton coming off a disappointing loss against Adelaide. They blew the lead late, and they also were dealt a few injuries. Sard's not going to be there, McGovern's not going to be there, and they were dealt early with Adam Chera not playing in the game as well, all three having hamstring issues. So they're going to need to find replacements. I think Chincotta should be coming in for Sard, which would be normal. Chera probably won't play, so who do they bring in for him? And then does Marchbank come in for McGovern? It's a bit of a wait and see. Maybe Lewis Young, we're yet to see. And then GWS were coming off a 1 point win against St Kilda, as I talked about in my Saints one against Bulldogs. They were able to control the game for the most part, but they're going to be without Sam Taylor, going to be without Stephen Cornelio. And so I think they're going to be a bit stretched at times with their key backs. Maybe Nick Haynes comes in, maybe Lockie O'Keefe. But it's going to be a really interesting battle. I think Jack Buckley probably takes the Kerno matchup, and then it depends on who's coming in, because maybe they take the Mackay matchup. But I think Carlton will be able to stretch them. I think their forward line should be going. It'll be an interesting midfield mix. Carlton now have Sam Walsh back, who was excellent against Adelaide in his first game back. But then the Giants will also potentially be able to score with no Sard and with no McGovern down back. So it's going to be a very interesting battle. Not at full strength, which is a bit disappointing. But I think Carlton will be able to get the job done, and by about 3 goals, so just under 20 points. Then another really good game. Starting off with some really good games here. We have Brisbane versus Geelong at the Gabba. Brisbane are coming off a solid loss, not a solid loss, a solid win against Melbourne on the Thursday night. It was a really, really solid performance. They tried to slow the game down and do what Hawthorn did, but to greater effect, and they're able to do it successfully. They played really, really solid. They played to their game plan, and they did it to perfection. It was executed perfectly. They were able to quieten Christian Petrarca. Clayton Oliver didn't have his best game, and Max Gawn was also ineffective. Their forward line struggled, and that Brisbane were able to get a really, really good win on the road and continue this form that they have going up into the next part of the season. And Geelong, they're able to get a very simple win against North Melbourne. No Hawkins, no Dangerfield, no Tom Atkins, and they're all going to be back for this week. So it's really, really smart play from them to be able to rest these players for a huge game up at the Gabba. Who do I think is going to win? I think Brisbane probably do. I still think their midfield now with Cam Rayner in there had an excellent game against Melbourne. Had, I think, 7 clearances in the first quarter, 6 clearances, which was a career high already. And so I think there's a bit more damage in there. There's a bit more flair. And I think that they'll get a really, really good win against an undefeated Geelong team who at the moment are sitting on top of the ladder. And I think they'll get the win by about 2 goals, 14 points I've tipped. Then we have West Coast versus Fremantle. West Coast coming off a very good performance against an utterly disappointing Richmond team. They're able to get the win by 40 points. Waterman kicked 6 goals. Tim Kelly was back to his best. Duggan was good off of half back. Barras and McGovern were excellent in the air, as they should be. And Jamie Cripps and Jack Darling were much better than what they had shown. But how much can you really take from a horrible Richmond team? That's going to be the question. Is it a great performance? Harley Reid, I forgot to mention as well, had 27 touches, got the Rising Star nomination. And so it's going to be how much momentum they can carry against what has now been a poorly performing in close games team in Fremantle. They've struggled to beat Carlton. They've struggled to beat Port Adelaide. Yes, the Carlton one was iffy, but I think they still probably would have lost it anyway because Carlton were really coming. And they just seem to struggle to score at the moment. Barras will go to a miss. Darcy might be back for them, so maybe McGovern goes to him. But I think it'll be an interesting matchup. It's going to be a very good battle in the midfield. You got Kelly, you got Reid, you got Jinby against Brayshaw, Sarong, Fife, Hayden Young. It's going to be very interesting. And then Fremantle's backline should be able to hold up against a undermanned West Coast forward line. And I think that's what should make the difference. They'll be able to hold up the West Coast game, and they should be able to really slow them down and get the win by about 4.5 goals. Then we have Sydney versus Gold Coast at the SCG. It's going to be a good game. Sydney are coming off the bye. Before that, they had started to slip a little bit, struggled to get a win over West Coast, and had just lost to Richmond. So it's a really good time for them to have the bye, they're able to get some players back, and hopefully they'll be able to build a bit of momentum now, get a full team healthy, and push for the finals again, push for top 4 as well. And then Gold Coast are coming off a domination game against Hawthorn. They really just controlled the game. They played how they wanted to play, and they were really effective with ball in hand. Ben King kicked 4 goals for. Anderson had 35 and a goal. Took Miller was running up and down. Jared Witts had a good game. They were just really, really good against a very poor Hawthorn side. And so I think they're going to be in really good form. But it is at the SCG, and I think Gold Coast will struggle a lot on the road this year, but also against a really good side at home. And I think that will definitely play a factor. I think Longmire will play around with a few things. Maybe Heaney plays full-time midfield, even with a couple players back. And I just think that they'll be able to get a good win by just under 4 goals. Then we have a tough game between North Melbourne versus Hawthorn. This should be an absolute ripper, only if you're a North or Hawthorn fan. Hawthorn are still favourites over North Melbourne. It's going to be at Marvel Stadium. I thought this would have been a perfect game to have in Tasmania between the two big players down there, but no, they haven't decided to do that. It is the only two winless teams of 2024 left in my predictions for this. And it's just going to be, I reckon, a very high-scoring game. Neither team has shown a willingness to defend very hard this year. They both want to get in front of the ball and try move the ball as quickly as possible. Hawthorn, I don't know if they're going to have Lewis or Bruce back. They really missed them on the weekend against Gold Coast. And then North Melbourne were just really, really putrid against a very in-form Geelong team. So it's going to be a very weird battle between two undefeated teams. Who do I have winning? I reckon North Melbourne probably are the better team at the moment, but it's going to be a topsy-turvy team. Depending on who Hawthorn gets back, I think could change this, but I think at the moment I'm going North Melbourne by 3 goals. So that's going to be the end of this video. If you liked it, please hit the like button. It really help push the video in the YouTube algorithm, growing my channel. Subscribe to this channel as well if you like this type of content. I'm trying to get about 4 videos a week done, and it'll really help me grow. And leave your thoughts in the comments below on who you think might win. And thanks for watching.